We are back. I'm your host, Barry Waxler, here with my co-host, Andrea Kay and Al Arias. And we have our next guest up here. I don't know how we're going to hold back from having too much fun, but Mr. Bruce Taub from the Fat Cat Beer Company. Welcome, Bruce.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, good.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, you know what? This is our pleasure. So I see all your, we're fortunate. I see all your beer on the table here, and none of it's opened yet. So that's coming in about 30 minutes.
But it's happy hour somewhere, isn't it?
It is.
But what are you going to drink?
It's always happy hour when you're with Bruce. So.
You said you could drink 5. So.
Anyway.
The beer business has its privileges. And sometimes you just have to take advantage of those.
Yeah.
Again, thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
Well, tell us about Fat Cat Beer Company. What's your background, and tell us more.
My background is somewhat eclectic. In fact, one of your guests asked me, she said, well, you were a tax lawyer, so that must have driven you to drinking, but that's not exactly true. My background is pretty diverse. I was a lawyer for a long time, a business and tax lawyer, and did some baseball stuff, and ultimately moved to Memphis, Tennessee, where I worked for one of my former clients. Was in a public company, a real estate investment trust, and when we sold that business, I got involved in the private equity world, and that led me to the craft beer industry, which is a very, very competitive one and a highly fragmented one. Most people don't realize that the beer industry is a $100 billion industry in the United States, and most of that's controlled by the big breweries, right, which make beer that most people in this town wouldn't drink, present company included. So I got involved in a beer company that owned the Fat Cat beer label. And it's a long story, best told over a proper beer. And I'm not drinking beer at 11:30 in the morning or whatever time it is. But ultimately, we got involved. Things didn't work out too well. It enabled us to avail ourselves of some remedies. Ultimately, we got control of the brand. We took the brand and we put it into a new business, an LLC, and we recapitalized it and knew that if we were going to be in the craft beer business, we needed to make sure that we armed the company with a variety of different products. So we took the first product, which was the Fat Cat Lager beer, which is a Vienna lager. Vienna lagers are Oktoberfest beers. We're starting the Oktoberfest very shortly now. We sell the beer all year round. But I knew that if we only had one beer style, we would never be able to sustain a real business model, so we created several others. The Fat Cat Lager was the first craft beer in a can back in 1995, and boy, how all the other craft beer guys have followed. Even Samuel Adams, the big, probably the largest craft brewer in the country, who vowed for years and years and years never to put beer in a can, is now canning beer. Of course, he spent $1 million designing his own can in order to justify that. It really isn't. It doesn't have to be quite that complicated. The can is impervious to oxygen and light, which means it's a better storage vessel for beer than the bottle, which generally allows light, no matter what color it is, and or light to seep in, or air to seep inside the top of the bottle. It's not a vacuum seal like a can gives you. Cans today are lined with a water-based polymer, so they prevent the liquid from touching any of the aluminum. And it's all one piece. This is literally all one piece, and then the top, which we call an end, is placed on with the proper pressure to create the vacuum seal, and hence can shelf life is way longer than bottled shelf life.
Interesting.
I was talking to one of the brewers over at Mancinitas the other day, and he was shipping beer to Italy, and they said, well, can you give me 6 months guarantee on the quality of the liquid? And he said, I'll give you 10 days after you open it, because it's bottled beer, and it's going to be warm, and it's not pasteurized, so it really has a very short shelf life. So the company that I formed was started in 2013. We launched here in San Diego. Our headquarters is here in La Jolla. We brew beer in San Diego. We brew beer in Wisconsin, and also about to brew beer in Northern Virginia. We sell beer in Florida, Georgia, Virginia, D.C., and, of course, we sell beer here in San Diego.
Well, one of the things that differentiates Fat Cat from a lot of others is you decided to do your own distribution, and that's different than most, isn't it?
It is, and it's a good point. Now, a lot of small companies that supply their own beer in California will go through the self-distribution route if they have the resources to do it. Otherwise, it's a really slow process. But to your point, California is one of the few states that is progressive in terms of allowing breweries or wineries to self-distribute.
We have no shortage of drinkers here.
Well, but there are a lot of regulations and a lot of laws and a lot of red tape. Just anybody who's in the alcoholic beverage business knows that. I mean, but ultimately, all the other states, not all, but most of the other states in the country require you to sell your product into a third-party distributor. And that was created after Prohibition was repealed, and the federal government allowed the states to create their own laws, which enabled, it created the three-tier system, which means that if you make the product, you have to sell it into an independent third party, and then that independent third party then sells to the retailer who ultimately sells to the consumer, okay? So in our situation,
sounds like a whole bunch of layers of overhead there.
It is there is a lot of that. But ultimately, it was a rule that was created because back then all the suppliers were gigantic and the distributors were tiny. So they created these things called franchise laws, which allow, and it's not franchise in the typical sense that when you're buying a franchise from somebody, but it's a franchise law that essentially says that if I do business with that distributor in a particular state, they really own the brand. And until they agree to release the rights to distributing it, I have to do essentially whatever it is they say. And you can see the imbalance there. Now these distributors have gotten gigantic, and a lot of smaller beer companies that are out there are having to do business with them, and they're really, they get taken advantage of, honestly. So in San Diego, and here's the best part, even though they own the rights to the brand and they really dictate what you're supposed to do, they still ask you as the supplier to be the real builder of the brand equity, which means I have to hire my own salespeople. They have to roam the streets in those particular markets, call on accounts, and ultimately do the salesperson's job for the distributor. If you don't do that, your beer does not grow at a rate, the velocity of sales does not get to the point where you want it to, because after all, I mean, we aren't making a profit now, but we sure intend on making a profit at some point in the future, so you have to really build the sales. So in San Diego, we elected to be our own distributor. We started in August of last year with Mile 1, Case 1, Account 1. We now sell beer to over 400 accounts, which includes Albertsons and Whole Foods and Cost Plus, World Markets, and a whole host of other different places. The Cohen Restaurant Group is a client of ours. We sell a lot of beer to them, both in the can and also in the bottle. So we're proud with the progress that we made. We got a long way to go, and as a small business, every day is a challenge. Every minute of every day can be a challenge.
How do you go about getting those accounts?
Well, we hired our own salespeople. We knew that if we were going to do all the heavy lifting that they require us to do in other markets, well, we might as well get paid for it here. We couldn't by law in those other places. But here, we hired our own salespeople. We bought our own trucks. We got a little warehouse, so we bring our beer here that comes from Wisconsin that's in a can, or we brew beer that's draft form that we sell into all our various on-premise accounts here in San Diego, which includes, it's a who's who. We're very fortunate, including the patio. I don't know if you all have ever been to the patio. Yeah. Two locations, one in PB and the other one now in Mission Hills, which just opened. They sell our Brochenography Pilsner beer like it's going out of style. We're very, very pleased with the relationship that we have with them. So ultimately, one of the other things I want to talk about, especially as it relates to San Diego, is people say, well, how did you grow so quickly? So we hire our own salespeople. They call on accounts. But we're really grassroots marketers. You can't sell a craft beer and grow a craft beer business by doing television ads or radio ads or big billboards, what have you. You got to do it by rolling up your sleeves and putting your boots to the ground and visiting people. And it's hard. Sometimes they throw you out. You got to have a tough skin. sometimes they love you and they say, "Oh, I've had your beer. It's the greatest thing in the world. It's awesome."
You know, I stop and think about somebody talking to a new tax person or a new financial planner, and we get thrown out pretty easily. It's got to be a lot easier to go in there with a can of beer in your hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, except that they're used to that, and a lot of times some of our salespeople won't even wear uniforms because they feel like they get the jump on the general manager when they walk in, especially if it's a woman. You know, "Oh, I'd like to see the general manager." "Oh, right away," and then they introduce themselves as the sales rep from. We call them directors of buzz. Actually, we have one director, one director of buzz here in San Diego, Mr. Ryan Alice, who does a great job for us.
Yeah, well, I like your title on your the questionnaire you sent in here. You're called the chief of whatever it takes.
I am, and you know, in my career, I've had the fortune of being called lots of other C-type jobs where it really meant something. Here, it's way too unglamorous to be calling yourself CEO. Really, I'm the CEO of a company that's, you know, I'm drinking the beer, I'm going to all the parties, I'm doing everything you can do to possibly grow the brand. But
interesting. You're listening to Close Up on San Diego Business here on KFSD AM 1450 and financialnewsandtalk.com. I'm your host, Barry Waxler, here with my co-hosts Andrea Kay and Al Arias, and our guest today is Mr. Bruce Taub from the Fat Cat Beer Company.
So how did being an attorney prepare you to do this?
You
got to have a thick skin coming from law, right?
I would hope so. I had a thick skin before I became a lawyer, but thanks to the Cal Western School of Law here in San Diego, I went to law school here. It's one of the few schools that would actually have me. But I did well enough that Georgetown ultimately admitted me for my master's in tax law program. So Al and I are kindred spirits in that regard. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I have a business and operational expertise, and I enjoy marketing big time. Most of the slogans on our beer cans and whatnot come from me, which seems sort of odd. To be able to have that ability is unique. Not everybody likes them, but most people do. The number one reason people try our beer is because of the packaging. The cat and the logo really resonates with a lot of folks.
Well, I'm seeing confession from here. You want to confess your sins
right
now?
All right, so that's a good segue.
You gotta confess.
Let's talk about our beer styles, because that's a great segue. So we have 5 different beer styles in a can. We already talked about the Vienna Lager, which is an Oktoberfest beer, but I knew, all right, if we're going to be a player in this space, who's the most successful beer company in different liquids? And so Belgian wheat beers, as much as Blue Moon is not a craft beer because they're really owned by Miller Coors, they're the number one selling wheat beer in America. So we made a Belgian wheat beer to rival it, and we say, take the Fat Cat Beer Challenge. We're irreverent in how we do it, which is why none of the Miller Coors distributors around the country want to do business with us, because they still have to sell Blue Moon, even when our beer is dominating it literally in blind taste tests in bars. So then we made something called Shawshank Injunction. That has a little bit something to do with how I got control of the business. And that's, again, another story. I won't bore your listeners with that. But ultimately, Shawshank's Injunction is a Kolsch-style pale ale. Kolsch pale ales are not hoppy like American pale ales. If you are used to drinking a Bud Light or a Corona or whatever have you, and you drank a Stone pale ale, you could hear them heaving in the next county, given how hoppy their beer is versus what our beer is. And most people really don't want super hoppy beers. And then Newcastle Brown Ale is the number one selling brown ale in America. So we made Bill Street Brown Ale, which is a tribute to my Memphis roots, and because Bill Street is to music what San Diego is to craft beer. It's a great brown ale. We blind tasted against Newcastle Brown Ale, and we win. And we have a saying.
Great. We're starting to run short on time, so we'll tell our listeners how they can find out more about Fat Cat.
Well, first of all, you can visit our website at fatcatbeers.com. And you can go to our Facebook page, which is the Fat Cat Beer Company on Facebook. And if I could just take a minute and talk about Facebook, we do a lot of events. And this weekend, the 20th anniversary for the San Diego Professionals Against Cancer Beer Festival.
Awesome.
This Friday night down at the Pier, you can go to our Facebook page and see our post on it. You can buy tickets online. It's a great event. We did it last year. We were on Fox News this week doing a segment about it. We were on television. That was a lot of fun. It's a great cause. It's not too late to buy tickets. It'll be a big crowd, but there's 60 breweries, and you're going to really enjoy it.
Great. Well, we appreciate you being with us. I'm definitely going to give you some follow-up calls so we can carry the story on in the future.
Awesome.
And we look forward to it. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Great. You're listening to Close Up on San Diego Business, where we get up close and personal with homegrown San Diego businesses and the people that are working hard to make a difference in our community. This is financialnewsandtalk.com. I'm your host, Barry Waxler. We'll be right back after the break with more homegrown business Close Up, and we'll have our final guest of the day, Miss Rebecca Justice.